You hope. You hope. You know? Tonight. Tonight, getting out of here. It has the potential. If I was running, it would be out of here by now. But I'm not. I do. You can. I would. Okay. Paul, I'll do it.
Oh, wait, that may be one thing I forgot to do. Okay.
I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Anchorage Assembly and begin with a roll call.
Mr. Drummond. Here. Mr. Trainee.
Here.
Mr. Honeman.
Here.
Ms. Gray-Jackson. Ms. Gray-Jackson is joining us by telephone. Ms. Osiander.
Here.
Mr. Hall.
Here.
Mr. Starr.
We're here.
Mr. Tromley.
Here.
Ms. Johnston. Mr. Flynn. And Mr. Birch.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Very good. Mr. Trainee, would you lead us in the pledge, please? There are minutes before us. The first one is of the regular meeting of October 11th, 2011.
Move to
approve.
accept.
That was moved by Ms. Johnston and seconded by Mr. Hall. Is there any discussion? Is there any objection to approval? Hearing and seeing none, those minutes are approved. Now we have the minutes before us of October 25th, 2011.
Move to approve.
Second.
Is there discussion? Is there objection? Seeing none, those minutes are approved. Mr. Vacalis, are you presenting a mayor's report, or should we wait?
If you could just go on with business, and then if he comes in, he may have something to announce.
Okay.
Thank you.
I am going to start with a plea, and that is, we have an exceptionally large number of laid-on-the-table items here tonight, plus a large addendum. And it's extremely difficult for everybody to read, understand, prepare amendments when we just get them. I am, frankly, still trying to work on an amendment on something I just read an hour ago for the first time. And I think that's unfair not only to us, but to members of the public who don't get a chance. Mr. Trainee, you want to speak to that?
Madam Chair, that's not just us, though. Keep in mind, it's also administration. Everybody's guilty of laid on the table, me included.
You're right. And I know this was exceptional because we have that large break now for Christmas. But, boy, this meeting, to get organized, it was chaotic. And so it's just a plea to all of you to please try to limit that as much as you can. And I include the administration in that plea. The other thing I want to point out, for those of you that were here on that Turnagain luck roll levy issue, as both Ms. Drummond and Mr. Hall has stated, that issue is becoming complex and is going to roll on over to the next meeting. So you can certainly testify tonight, but the vote will not occur on that meeting, on that matter this evening. Also wanted to clarify, I had a number of people told me, vote yes for fireworks or vote no for fireworks. Both of the fireworks items on the agenda don't do those things. They just basically add potential modifications to the existing allowance for fireworks. So just be aware of that. With that, I think that's all I had. So we can start with committee reports. Mr. Birch, you want to have any committee report you want to give?
No report.
Flynn?
Ditto.
Johnston?
No report.
Trombley?
Same.
Starr?
The Budget and Finance Committee meeting for the 15th is going to be canceled. That's for Thursday.
Okay. Mr. Hall?
No report.
Ms. Gray Jackson, do you have any report? No, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Hodeman?
Other than that, we had the Public Safety Committee meeting last Wednesday, so the one scheduled for tomorrow was preempted by the meeting last week. And we did discuss fireworks. It was a very light attended committee meeting, but suspect and anticipate some movement on the let them work, let them play issues that were presented a couple of months ago before this body. This is for the 18 to 20-year-olds musicians playing in the bars.
I remember the issue. When did you say your next committee meeting is?
It was scheduled for tomorrow, but we preempted it by having it last week because of the fireworks ordinance you'd
Okay.
asked.
Do you have another one scheduled?
Not
in the
till
immediate
January,
future?
not till the second week in January.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Trainee?
Just I've got our attorney working on an ordinance that will give tax relief to widows, widowers of people under age of 60 that die in the military service. And Adam, when I get it done, I'll bring it to you to see if that's what you want to go forward with, because you and I were talking about it. Remember, she was here the last meeting?
We remember.
So we're going to see if we can address that issue. It'll still be required change in state law, but there's no reason we can't submit it to the voters in this April, in conjunction with the state law being put in effect.
Okay. Ms. Drummond?
No report, Madam Chair.
All right. With that,
Madam
Mr. Flynn had a request.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to change the order today, go down the agenda to special orders to take up the mayor's budgetary veto.
Second.
Is there objection to changing the order of the day? Seeing no objection, we'll go ahead and do that and deal with the special orders. Mr. Flynn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. When I can, I'll move to
Could you turn
overturn.
your mic on, sir?
It is, sorry. I'll get a little closer.
All right.
When the screen allows me to, I'll move to override the mayor's veto of $144,607 for the Parks and Recreation Department.
Second.
All right. You want to discuss it, Mr. Flynn?
I just appreciate the Assembly having included it in its original budget and would appreciate the consideration of including it in the final budget.
All right. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Ms. Gray Jackson, I'm sorry I should have asked you specifically. All right, I'm going to. That is correct, ma'am. Do you want to comment on that? I'll reset the vote if you do. All right. Ms. Gray Jackson, how do you vote? And that override passes. All right, we are back now to the agenda, and there is an addendum and laid on the table items. A motion would be appreciated.
Move to incorporate.
Second, both of them.
Is there objection to incorporation? Seeing none, the addendum and laid on the table are incorporated, and I will read them into the record. And
You can take a breath, Debbie.
yeah, it's a long addendum, so my apologies. All right, 9B8, AR 353. It's a resolution appropriating an amount not to exceed $30,720 of Area-Wide General Fund 101 fund balance to the Real Estate Department, Area-Wide General Fund 101, 2011 operating budget, to be used as a contribution to the Area-Wide General Capital Improvement Program Fund 401, and appropriating said contribution within the Area-Wide General CIP Fund for the payment of 2011 interest on an interfund loan from Municipal Light and Power for the purchase of a parcel legally described as Tract B, Muldoon Estates, in 2006 by the Real Estate Department, accompanied by AM 747. Under the bid awards, C section of our agenda, there's a new item, AM 737, which is a recommendation of award to Western Peterbilt Incorporated to furnish commercial front-load refuse vehicles to the Municipality of Anchorage Solid Waste Services Department for $574,350. Under the D section, or new business of our agenda, we have the new items, D6, AM 738, Budget Advisory Commission appointment of Tom Smith. Under D7, AM 739, we have change order number 4 to purchase order number 20104026 with American Building Maintenance Co-West to provide janitorial services for the Municipality of Anchorage ML&P for $14,500. D8 will be AM 740, recommendation of award to Alstom Grid Incorporated to replace and upgrade the static VAR compensators and associated systems for the Municipality of Anchorage ML&P, $6,708,705. D9 on our agenda will be AM 741, change order number 1 to purchase order number 20110746 with BC Excavating LLC to provide earthwork and remediation system installation to the Peacock Cleaners Cleanup Project for the Municipality of Anchorage Real Estate Department, $27,622.25. D10 is AM 744. It's approval of a contract award for Westlaw Computer Assisted Legal Research Services to West Group Incorporated for the Department of Law in an amount not to exceed $81,661. D11 is AM 745. Amendment number 3 to the professional service contract number 20110394 with Hattenberg, Dilly & Linnell, LLC, to provide professional engineering services for capital improvement projects for the municipality, Merrillfield Airport, $327,934. Under the information and reports section of our agenda E, there's an E8, and that's the November 2011 monthly expenditure report from OMB. For introduction is a new ordinance, F6 AR 350. It's a resolution of the municipality appropriating an amount not to exceed $175,000 from the Alaska Department of Public Safety as a grant and $3,848 from the 2011 General Government Operating Budget, Department of Health and Human Services, Area-Wide General Fund 101 as matching funds to the State Direct Federal Pass-Through Grant Fund 231 for the provision of the Sexual Assault Response Team examinations through the Department of Health and Human Services. Public hearing is set for our next meeting, which is on January 17th. That is accompanied by AM 742. Also for introduction is F7 on our agenda, AR 351. It's a resolution appropriating $8 million to Municipal Light and Power 2011 Operating Fund 530 for increased energy production costs. It's accompanied by AM 743, and it's set for public hearing at our next meeting on January 17th. F8 will be AR 352. This is a resolution of the municipality appropriating $1,700,000 From the Public Works Department, Maintenance and Operations Division, Equipment Maintenance Internal Service Operating Fund, 601, unrestricted net assets account to the Equipment Maintenance Internal Service Capital Fund to purchase replacement vehicles and equipment. This is accompanied by us by AM 746, and it's set for public hearing at our next meeting on January 17th. Under Old Business, 11A2 is an S version of AO 112. It's an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code Title 8 to add new offenses for sitting or lying down on sidewalks in the Downtown Improvement District and for pedestrian interference, amending Section 8.75.170 regarding prohibited panhandling and amending the fine schedule at Section 14.60.030 accordingly. And that is accompanied by AM 748. Then, laid on the table items, 9B6B will be an S version of AR 345. It's a resolution amending the fund balance policy of the municipality to comply with Gatsby Statement Number 54, and it's accompanied by AM 733, an A version, which differs from the original. B9 will be AR 354. It's a resolution of the Assembly supporting permitting of free speech and peaceable assembly by Occupy Anchorage on the Park Strip under a revocable waiver for the insurance requirements, subject to risk mitigation factors and municipal police chief determination of public health, safety, and welfare. B10 on our agenda is AR 355. It's a resolution of the Assembly stating its temporary non-objection to transfer of location and ownership of beverage dispensary liquor license number 2988 with the restaurant designation permit to Little Italy Ristorante and to allow alcoholic beverage license use temporarily at the location until final action by the Assembly on application 2012-001 for conditional use. This is accompanied by Assembly Memorandum 750. Then under new business, 9D12 will be Assembly Memorandum 749, the proprietary purchase of 1 million BTU indirect diesel-fired heater from Totem Equipment and Supply Incorporated for the Municipality Office of Emergency Management for $36,750. Then under continued public hearings, 13C2, there is now an S version of AO 120. This is an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code Chapter 26.80 to increase tipping fees for solid waste disposal, and it's accompanied by AM 687, and this is an A version of that memorandum. Phew. All right. The amended consent agenda is now before us.
Move to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you very much. All right. The consent agenda is before us. Ms. Drummond, I'm going to start with you. And if you could tell me what items you'd like to discuss.
Nothing at this time, Madam Chair. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Trainee.
Please add to the S version on Little Italy, please add Harriet and Elvie as
Yeah, I heard.
co-sponsors,
Okay.
if you would, ma'am.
Very
That's
good.
all, thank you.
You don't want to pull anything, Mr. Trainee? All right. Mr.
No, the S
Honeman.
version will go forward, ma'am.
Mr.
Pulled.
Honeman?
9 Bravo 9 for discussion.
9 Bravo 9, which is a late on the table
On the
item.
later on the table, yes. Madam Chair.
All right. Ms. Gray Jackson, is there anything you'd like to pull?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'd like to pull item 9, element 1, and item 9, element 2. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Was the second one 2?
Yes,
All right, 1 and 2. Okay. Mr. Hall?
Yes, 9B7.
All right. Anything else?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Starr?
9 Bravo 6, and it's the one submitted on the, late on the table items.
Okay, so we should pull
Basically, the
all
S version.
versions.
The
Well,
S version of 9 Bravo 6.
but we have to pull the other one too, I think, just because we don't want to pass one and then have the S version. So all the Bravo 6 and its cousins there.
Roger that.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Starr?
No, ma'am.
All right. Mr. Trombley,
9 Bravo 5, please.
and 5.
That's all, Madam Chair.
Okay. Ms. Johnston? Mr. Flynn?
Item 9 Alpha 1 for presentation.
9 Alpha 1. Okay. Anything else, Mr. Flynn?
That is all, Madam Chair.
Mr. Birch?
No items.
Mr. Kalis, anything from the administration?
No, ma'am.
All right. So I have that we want to talk about A1, B5, B6, E1, E2, oh, I'm sorry, and also B9. B7?
5, 6, 7, and 9.
No, Mr. Hall pulled Bravo 7. I didn't say it? Oh, thank you for catching it. All right. Okay. So, with that, the remainder of the consent agenda is before us. Ms. Gray Jackson, how do you vote?
Yes.
And that passes unanimously. All right, the first item before us is AR 337. It's a resolution honoring Sharon Gleason for her prior service on the Alaska Superior Court in Anchorage, congratulating her achievements, and celebrating her appointment and confirmation to United States District Court.
Move to approve.
Second?
Is there any discussion? Is there any opposition? Seeing none, that's passed unanimously. Is Ms. Gleason here? Ah, there you are.
Please come forward, Judge Gleason.
Please come forward.
Mr. Hall will accompany you to the podium.
And Mr. Flynn, you're reading?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
This is a resolution in Anchorage Municipal Assembly honoring Sharon Gleason for her prior service in the Alaska Superior Court in Anchorage, congratulating her achievements and celebrating her appointment and confirmation to the United States District Court. Whereas, nominated by President Obama in early April of this year, Alaska Superior Court presiding Judge Sharon Gleason's federal appointment to the United States District Court for the District of Alaska was confirmed by the Senate on November 15, 2011. And whereas, highly regarded for her judicial temperament, fairness, dedication to justice, and pioneering work on behalf of families and children while serving successive terms on the Alaska Superior Court, Judge Sharon Gleason's nomination was recommended by Senator Mark Begich and strongly supported through the confirmation process by Senator Lisa Murkowski. And whereas, appointed to the Alaska Superior Court by Governor Knowles in 2001, Judge Gleason has been retained twice by Alaska voters, including her most recent retention election in 2010. And whereas federal judicial appointments are for life, and Judge Gleason's appointment follows U.S. District Judge John Sedgwick's change to senior status. And whereas Judge Gleason graduated magna cum laude in 1974 from Washington University in St. Louis, received her law degree from the University of California, Davis School of Law in 1983, served as a law clerk to the Alaska Supreme Court Chief Justice Edmund Burke, and was in the private practice of law for 17 years prior to her 2001 State of Alaska judicial appointment. And whereas no governor since Tony Knowles has appointed a woman to the Superior Court in Anchorage, and as presiding judge of the Alaska Superior Court, Judge Gleason has been one of 4 female Superior Court jurists statewide, including Superior Court Judge Anna Moran of Kenai and Superior Court Judges Carrie Christensen and Vanessa White of Palmer. And whereas for the United States District Court in Alaska, Judge Gleason will join Chief Judge Ralph Beastline, Judge Timothy Burgess, Senior Judge John Sedgwick, Senior Judge James Singleton Jr., and Senior Judge Russell Holland, becoming the first woman on the Federal District Court bench in Alaska. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Assembly hereby honors Sharon Gleason for her prior service on the Alaska Superior Court in Anchorage, congratulates her on her achievements, and celebrates her appointment and confirmation to the United States District Court, passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this 13th day of December, 2001.
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate the honor. I did just want to say I graduated in 1979, not 74, so I didn't want to get aged 5 years unnecessarily, but thank you so much. This means so much to me.
We can actually correct that if you want to get a new
Oh,
document.
that would be great.
Yeah. I have total empathy.
I just read them.
Very good.
Thank you all.
Well, thank you. Right, we are now at 9 Bravo 5. This is AR 343. It's a resolution appropriating an amount not to exceed $49,900 from the Retirement Certificates of Participation Debt Service Fund balance to the COP Debt Service Fund operating budget, which will be used as a contribution to the area-wide general fund to partially offset the charges from the Anchorage Parking Authority for employee parking and will close out the COP Debt Service Fund.
Move to approve.
Second.
Go ahead, Mr. Trombley.
I apologize for not sending this in an email to the administration. Obviously there's quite a bit of things to do. So a couple of things is, I understand that we're applying it to, well, number one, why are we paying for employee parking? For the Anchorage Parking Authority. Does anyone know?
Thank you. Through the chair, Mr. Trombley. Your question is why are we paying for employee parking? This has been a long-standing policy for quite a few years, where the employee parking is subsidized to some degree, but the employees also contribute. And so both parties contribute, and the reason for that, of course, is there is limited parking. You do have the parking meters, et cetera. So that's how this got started years ago. It's not uncommon. Other entities do the same thing in the downtown area. Private enterprise does as well.
Okay, and then the other thing is, at the very end, in the memorandum, it says that this will allow additional time to determine a long-term solution to the current arrangement. How far behind is the fund, and what has been determined to be the long-term solution?
Yes, sir. Our CFO was going to address that. She is not here yet. She's on the way, but our comptroller will address that for you, Mr. Ryan.
Through the chair, Mr. Trombley, at December 31st, the parking fund will be fully expended. The $39,000 that will be put in there will help pay the parking. I believe it's till the end of 2012, and at that point, we'll have to look at probably increasing the parking rates for the employees.
I apologize. So you said that the contribution will be increased for the employees in order to cover the difference. Is that correct?
At the end of 2012, when the fund again is depleted, we'll have to probably look at increasing the rate for the employees.
Okay, and so this money, which will be put in to cover the difference, there will be no appropriation by the Assembly between now and the end of 2012, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all, Madam Chair.
Is there any further discussion on this matter? Seeing none, please vote. Ms. Gray Jackson?
Yes.
That item passes unanimously. We are now at 9 Bravo 6. This is AR 345. It's a resolution amending the fund balance policy to comply with Gatsby Statement number 54, accompanied by AM 733. Mr. Starr?
Yeah, move 2011-34 in the S version.
Second.
Do you want to discuss it, sir?
Actually, I have an amendment on page 2.
All right. Give us a second to get there.
Sure. Both versions are the same for this purpose of the amendment, so if you have the old copy, it's fine too.
All right. Okay. Go ahead, sir.
It's on line 15.
On page 2?
Correct.
Okay.
Page 2, section 4 on line 15 there, showing, I'd like to change the 1.25% to 2%.
All right. You want to speak to that, sir?
No, I'm just cautious of the 1.25% being a little bit low for the city of our size. Our ability to recover and pay ongoing emergency-related expenses at the 1.25 level, I think, is just just not appropriate. So that's my motion. It's currently 2 to 3% as it is.
All right. Seeing no one in queue.
Madam Chair?
Ms. Gray Jackson, did you hear the amendment?
Yes, I did have an amendment.
Would you like to
Unfortunately, I had a chance to read the entire original document, and I really appreciate the thoroughness and the way the document was put together. And I also appreciate the advice that we got from our paid contractor, Southwest. And I think that the original submitted document, based on the advice from Southwest, is quite sufficient, and I don't think that this 0.75% increase is necessary. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. Seeing no one else in queue, please vote on the amendment. And Ms. Gray Jackson, you said you were a no. All right. And that amendment passes 8-3. So the main matter is before us. Is there anything else anybody would like to bring up? Seeing nothing further, please vote on the document as amended. Ms. Gray Jackson?
Yes?
That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item before us is 9 Bravo 7. This is AR 347. It's a resolution of the Assembly in support of allocating 100% of the alcohol beverage tax receipts to fund additional treatment services in recognition of overwhelming unmet demand for substance abuse treatment in Alaska. I need a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Go ahead, Mr. Hall. You had pulled this one.
Yes, I pulled this side basically to try to get a little information and clarification. Mr. Flynn may be able to do that. If not, I would look to staff. My question is, Mr. Flynn, in doing this, how does this impact our municipal budget? What would the fiscal note be if we're taking funds that may be used for something other than the substance abuse treatment?
Sure, and thank you for the question and the opportunity to clarify, Madam Chair. These are state alcohol taxes, not local alcohol taxes, and therefore used for state general fund budget activities. So I guess the only potential effect we might have is if we have more treatment programs available, then perhaps we'll be able to help some more folks, and they'll be less impactful on municipal services. That's pretty esoteric. It'd be tough to define in a C. Is there anything else I can provide?
Thank you. I'd ask that same question of the controller, just verification that there's no impact on our city budget.
Through the chair, Assemblyman, there is no impact on our operating budget. We do receive from the state revenues from license fees, alcohol establishment license fees. We get that, and that's not what this is addressing. So no impact.
Thank you.
Is any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Ms. Gray Jackson? Ms. Gray Jackson?
Yes.
That was a yes vote?
Yes.
Okay. That passes unanimously. Moving on to, let's see, the laid on the table item Bravo 9. This is AR 354. It's a resolution supporting permitting of free speech and peaceable assembly by Occupy Anchorage on the Park Strip under a revocable waiver on the insurance requirement, subject to risk mitigation factors and municipal police chief determination on public health, safety, and welfare.
Move to approve.
Second.
Would you like to speak to that, Mr. Honeman?
Yes. After the Friday's work session, and in listening to both the chief of police, the Parks and Recreations director, and our municipal attorney, one thing became fairly clear. I think everybody is desirous of having this kind of amorphous group, as we all know, that there's no real direction or leadership, and there's no real much like someone else coming to request a permit or application for a parade and such. And the chief actually and the city attorney believe that it would be to our advantage as a municipality to have this group, for lack of a better definition, under permit, because it is actually required for any other organization or group to use any location of our public lands to have that permit. And one of the things that seemed to be somewhat of a quagmire and stumbling block for permitting is the insurance requirement. And so after listening to all the information and good education, by the way, and the great works being done, I'd like to commend both Chief Mew and Parks Director Rada of their ongoing and continuing dialogue with this group. I think it serves our community better, having had that outreach and being able to have some communication. But I believe this just gives us a resolution that kind of encourages continued cooperation, as well as gets us, I believe, hopefully allows the administration some more, if you will, support to get us to that point of getting a permit, for the lack of the fact that this is more of a community interest group, and I think it's going to be very difficult to say otherwise. We're at kind of the standoff position. If you don't have a permit, you can't stay. You can't stay because you don't have insurance, you can't get the permit. It's just one of those issues that so far it hasn't been a problem, and I'd like to continue it not being a problem in our community.
Mr. Trombley.
One of the challenges I have with this is that although there is not, and it does state this, that there's not one recognized national organization, I think the fact that they can't get insurance from a group is an indication of the capability here. Now they haven't, and I think, granted, this is an offshoot of Occupy Wall Street, which turned into Occupy Oakland and all over the country, and we've seen rapes, we've seen murders at those other occupies, and I think the reason that they can't find insurance is because since this is an offshoot of that, there's that concern. And so I would be concerned with passing a resolution that supports an organization that's loosely affiliated with the other same groups around the city or around the country that have caused tremendous amount of havoc that we've seen recently at the port.
Is there anyone else in queue? Mr. Birch?
Yeah, at the work session, we did discuss the potential risk and liability associated with the city. I guess I would just look to the municipal attorney and just kind of get a reading on this. I guess I'm not entirely sure what a revocable waiver of insurance. I guess that means you can kind of size a situation up and not require insurance. But again, as Mr. Trombley pointed out, you run some risk there, and I guess I'd just be interested in kind of an administrative perspective from a legal standpoint on what sort of risk we do run.
Through the chair, Mr. Birch, as I understand the proposal, the revocable aspect would be that if the group under the permit began to change its activities to a degree that we felt the risk was growing, then we might be able to come back to them under the permit and say, no, your activities are exceeding what we originally anticipated. We think now you're going to need insurance because the risks have grown. To Assembly Member Mr. Honeman, I think that's the intent, as I understand it.
Mr. Birch?
Okay, if I might continue, I think the additional part of this discussion we had, if any other nonprofit organization, like say the Girl Scouts, shows up and they're clearly a low risk to no risk operation, are they also entitled to a similar? I mean, is this something that can be universally applied? Through the chair.
Through the chair, Mr. Birch, I think once you go down this road of looking at different groups and trying to decide what the insurance requirement is going to be, and you offer an opportunity to waive that requirement, then I think you're going to have to decide what criteria you're going to use for any group that comes in and asks for a waiver. Mm-hmm. Is it because they have a message that they want to deliver? Is it because they're disorganized and haven't set themselves up as a nonprofit, thereby qualifying for insurance? Long term, the issue is how is this going to work for the next group and the group after that? Okay. And that I can't foretell, but we would have to figure out what that criteria is and make sure that we manage that in some non-discriminatory fashion.
Okay. Thank you. In that case, Madam Chair, I guess I have some significant concerns about waiving the insurance provisions here, and I'm not sure I'm comfortable supporting this. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I, too, have concerns about the resolution and maybe its resultant effects. A couple of things. First and foremost, as I think Mr. Honeman described, this is a group that doesn't particularly have an identified leader or a person accountable, which, if there is damage, makes it even more difficult to collect. It's not a established organization where you know where to find the headquarters and the leadership, and if there was damage done after you revoked insurance requirements, how would you get remuneration for any damage? And that's one of the challenges when you have an organization that really is not organized. And so, and as Mr. Wheeler said, it goes down a path where if you make exception for one, where do you stop making the exceptions? And that's why with our codes, with the permit requirements, it's uniformly applied. We do have some leeway in terms of, some of the standards. But, for example, with permit fees, we've allowed folks to actually do work in exchange for the permit fees, that sort of thing. But, a public asset, it belongs to all of us, and the insurance requirement is to protect that asset. And the other thing is, if you look at the title and it talks about the police chief and the determination of public health, safety, and welfare, the chief is not responsible for determining public health. We have other departments, clearly, that are the more appropriate agencies for dealing with public health issues. So you'd be assigning the chief a duty which is not within the realm of his department. And so I think that would be problematic as well.
Thank you. Mr. Honeman?
Well, I appreciate the comments, and I think we're kind of dancing around a little issue. I know it was very tricky on Friday. I know we're coming through the holiday break and won't be in session for at least a month. And already these folks have been on our public spaces, and we can't deny the fact that they're exercising First Amendment free speech. And certainly there's concerns, and in fact I think I spoke loud and clear that I'm very much in favor of following the adherence to the permit process. And but for the fact of the insurance and concerns, I don't see any difference between, I guess I do. I see a big difference between an organization that has a structure and who's there for a separate reason and interest, as opposed to people exercising First Amendment free speech. The regulations, the permits that go into, the requirements that go into getting a permit, actually gives us, the municipality and our chief, much more latitude and actually enforcement ability and on things such as if there's damage to public property. These people would be responsible for that property they occupy, for lack of better terms. And so if we start seeing things that the mayors decide to actually define, such as damage to public property, whatnot, this the prima facie information on the requirement of the permit that the property be left in as good, if not better position that they occupied when they first set up. So I think that I strongly believe that this being just a resolution carries no full effect of a law, just gives the administration and our departments a little more latitude in order and direction from this body to basically say, continue on your good works of working together cooperatively and try to seek out a way to get these people under permits so that they're in compliance and that we have more ways to regulate and enforce without this big divisiveness that we see going on around the rest of the country. I think we should be the model community in how we're dealing with First Amendment free speech and this group. And if they're not abiding by the regulations required under their permit, it should be revoked. But up until that point, I think we have an opportunity here, and I'd sure hate for us to miss it. So I urge support.
Ms. Johnston?
Madam Chair?
I'll get you, Ms. Gray Jackson. Just give it, Ms. Johnson first.
Chief. As with all these kind of issues that we so nicely present to you, does this give you any extra tools, or does this empower you in any way, or would it make any difference in you would continue to do the same way you've been handling this so far? And I mean, does this help? Or
through the chair, Ms. Johnson, I think what Mr. Hunneman said earlier, that attributed to Mr. Wheeler and I at the meeting, is true. I think this whole thing works better if they are under permit. So that's been our goal, is to get them under permit. We're hung up on the insurance piece. That really isn't a police piece. I would like to see them under a permit. Now, the insurance piece affects, more risk management, I think. It protects the city's infrastructure. It's a matter of fiduciary responsibility, I suppose. I think these are not police issues. I'd like to have them under a permit, so I guess the issue is, how do we get them under a permit? Right now, the requirement would be for them to have insurance. That's the one that we've been hung up on, that we can't seem to get across that hurdle. The advantage to having the permit, though, is, regardless of what mechanism we use to get there, is that they have exclusive use if they want to enforce that. So if they have people or things that occur within their permitted area that even they don't like, they can elicit our support, our assistance in removing those individuals, so they can kind of keep a lid on their own group. And so they have that advantage, where if they don't have the permit, they don't have that advantage. Plus the fact, if they don't have the permit, there's limits to how long they can be there. And those limits are not nearly as long as what they desire.
So what I'm hearing, which is what we got out of our work session on Friday, but what I'm hearing, I think as a whole, the Assembly is in support of what you and Mr. Rada have been doing, and the Mayor administration. And so I'm just wondering if this is something that gives you some extra help or hindrance, or is it, or is it just something that we can sort of pass and say that it feels good?
I think the Mayor those are the 2 points that occurred to us, I think. One, what does this mean for groups in the future that want to use the park strip? There's a set of precedent that is problematic down the road, not problematic with the Occupy group, but problematic for all the other groups that want to use it and don't have the money or can't raise the money or whatever. And then how do we protect our city assets and protect ourselves from liability if something goes wrong in the camps, and we've assumed that liability for them. I appreciate the attempt to solving the resolution, but I don't know if we're not trading one problem for another here.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Trombley, no?
Never
All right.
mind.
Ms. Gray-Jackson, and then Mr. Vacalis. Ms. Gray-Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll pass. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Vacalis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The only thing I'd like to add to this is that when you look at how we operate within the municipality, you have the Parks and Rec Director responsible for the parks. You have the police chief, of course, enforcing laws. You have the risk manager making sure that risks are minimized to the municipality, and that safety, under their purview as well, is applied across the board, so that not only folks within the municipality government are operating safely, but also that there's a safety environment of which people that use our facilities, whatever those facilities are. So from the risk perspective, it's also to make sure that the facilities are safe. When you talk about health and public health, you're talking about the health department. So these are all things that are outside of the purview of the police chief. But these are all things that are considered when we make decisions. And one of the concerns that we have when you look at risk management is that there's an awful lot of things involved in risk management in trying to protect the city. It's not only destruction of city property, but it's also, what if one of these members of this group, for some reason or other, does something that's an unsafe act on municipal property and they get hurt? Without insurance and without naming us as an insured, then we're on the hook. What if an individual basically goes onto this property that's not part of this group, but takes offense to what these folks are doing? and basically assaults one of them or injures one of them. Well, who is on the hook? We are, without insurance. That's why across the board, we have required insurance for anybody using in an activity using our facilities. Now remember, the issue here is a permit in which to use the park as an overnight camping area. That's what the permit's for. They can use the park during the day. This is for the nighttime where they want to camp on that park as an activity. That's what the insurance is for. So I just ask you to be mindful of that. And again, it's not really the police chief's purview as the title indicates here. It really is all of these departments under my purview and the mayor's. So, thank you.
Mr. Honeman again?
And I appreciate the points. And, this resolution, the intent of this resolution is in the spirit of cooperation with our body, with the administration, to try to work through some challenges with this group in our community. And there's no doubt they're here. There's no doubt that there's some things that we need to do as a municipality to make sure that whichever direction and whatever challenges that are presented to us, that we try to come up with some workable solutions. And if you're hung up on the fact that the police chief doesn't determine public health, there's a lot of things that the police officers do that actually day to day, in the course of their actions, they work with many different divisions and departments within the municipality, and for that matter, the state of Alaska. I mean, whenever you go into a home and you're dealing with children, you contact the State Department of OCS, Children's Services, Office of Children's Services. You work with the courts for warrants. I mean, there's no one entity that stands alone. This gives the police chief, I mean, if he wants to subdivide, if you will, the extra obligations or responsibilities to health department for the issues of trash and litter, that sort of thing, certainly he has the purview to do so. The concern here is that when you look under one of the concerns that Mr. Vikalis just pointed out under mitigating insurable risk is it's about the fifth line down, individual waivers of liability, acknowledging assumption of risk and commitment to reasonable precautionary measures. And I think that in of itself, would give a good standing to the municipality for people who are occupying that space under that permit. And that would go a long ways towards mitigating, I think, the intent that balancing out people's ability to use First Amendment rights and their exercising thereof, and at the same time the municipality's interest in regulating their conduct on that property. So, is it a perfect solution? I don't know that we have one. But absent that, this was a resolution intended to make it a little better for the municipality in addressing these issues and challenges.
Ms. Johnston and then Mr. Flynn.
Yes, I'd like to make an amendment. I would like to strike lines 24 through 28. In the back, it's section 1. Sorry, it's page 2.
I see no second, so at this point that would die. Anything else? Oh.
I'll second it.
All right. Then the amendment is before us to strike section 1 on page 2. Do you want to speak to that, Ms. Johnston?
I agree with Mr. Hahnemann, and I think most of us would agree the efforts that the administration has done on our behalf with this group, and we just want to commend them for their efforts. And I think I would leave it at that.
Mr. Flynn, do you want to speak to the amendment?
My point applies to both the amendment and the
Go
overall.
ahead, sir.
Which is, I would note that Section 1 is not prescriptive. Nothing in this resolution is. And if we approve it, either with or without the amendment, and the administration chooses not to proceed along these lines, we can't force them to.
All right. The amendment is before us then. So the vote will be, do you want to delete section 1? Please vote. Ms. Gray Jackson?
No.
That amendment failed 4 to 7, excuse me. All right. Anything else? All right. With that, the main item is before us. Seeing no one else in queue, please vote. Ms. Gray Jackson.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson. And that passes 6-5. All right. The next item before us is, I believe, 9E1. This is AIM 123. It's the Internal Audit Report, number 13, on the Community Health Service Division Billing and Collection Follow-Up, Department of Health and Human Services. Ms. Gray Jackson, do you want to make the motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move to accept.
Second.
Do you want to speak to it, ma'am?
First off, I want to thank Mr. Raskins, if he's still there, for quickly emailing me the full documents for both of these audits, because I had a chance to read them. And with that said, this particular audit, I feel strongly needs further discussion at the Municipal Audit Committee level. Therefore, I'd like to postpone action until our next meeting, and ask the clerk to schedule a Municipal Audit Committee meeting before our next meeting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, we've had a request from the chair of the committee to postpone action on this and refer to committee. Is there any objection to doing that? Seeing no objection, then this matter will be referred to committee. Thank you, Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
The next item before us is 9E2. This is AIM 124. It's another internal audit report, number 14, on the Chugach Eagle River Senior Center. Ms. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was quite satisfied with the findings and administration's response, and feel comfortable that there is no need for discussion on this particular audit at the Municipal Audit Committee level. But with that said, I would really like to see that $1,000, that first $1,000 for major repairs that the contractor was supposed to pay. I'd like to see that paid retroactively, because the recommendation says, well, we'll ensure that this doesn't happen again. Well, as far as I'm concerned, that's not enough. I'd like to see that $1,000 recouped. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no one else in queue, please vote on acceptance of this report. Ms. Gray Jackson, did you vote on that? Do you want to vote on that?
Yes. Yes, Madam Chair.
All right. And that is approved unanimously, or accepted unanimously. Thank you. All right. That brings us, let's see, does that finish it, Madam Clerk? I think it does. I'm turning pages here. Okay. That appears to. Which brings us, Mr. Mayor, you didn't get to give your report. Would you like to give it now?
I'll pass, Madam Chair.
All right. Then we are at 11 on our agenda, the notice to rescind. This is AO 112, an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code Title 8 to add new offenses for sitting and lying down on sidewalks in the Downtown Improvement District and pedestrian interference, amending Section 8.75.170 regarding prohibited panhandling, and amending the fine section at Section 14.60.030 accordingly. Mr. Trainee?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to rescind this. This is the action we did on the 22nd November approving 2011-1112.
Second.
Second.
All right, that item is before us. Is there any discussion? Okay, could you push the screen, please? Thank you.
There's nothing here. Okay.
This was the end.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. I admit to having some slight frustrations with Section 1, but I think that overall this was a good ordinance. I voted for it, and I do support it. I've thought about this rescission and think that particularly Since we've got the holidays coming up, and I believe there would be a veto if we did go back into it, I think the best approach, the one I plan to take, is to spend a little time on this next year and look at potential changes on rewording on that sitting down section, which I think are needed. But I hesitate to do a full-blown recension now and think that it would just complicate things over the holidays. I wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Mr. Honeman.
I think Mr. Trainey's hand was up. I'm not sure if he's able to get his
I'm
button.
trying. It's not working.
The button's not getting it, so I yield to Mr. Trainey if it's okay with you, sir.
Very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dennis, does the mayor have the ability to veto a rescission? I know he can veto an ordinance passed by the Assembly, but does he have the ability to rescind, to veto a rescission?
Through the chair, Mr. Trainey, this gets into that issue we've touched on once or twice over the last couple of years, and I think in the past going all the way back to unification, and that is, what is the full nature and extent of the mayor's power to veto? Prior municipal attorney opinions, as you know, have indicated that the mayor has inherited the borough mayor powers of veto, which they concluded included the ability to veto motions. This is a motion, so the issue is whether or not the mayor can veto the motion. And there is significant debate on that issue.
So it's neither yes or no, Mr. Weider?
The position of this office is that he can veto motions, so we would take the position that he could veto this motion.
Thank you, Dennis. Julia, what's your position on this question? I know you've looked at it in depth.
Mr. Trainey, through the chair, in looking at the mayoral powers of veto, as indicated in prior discussion, for home rule municipalities, the statute, the Alaska statute relied on in the materials presented by the prior municipal attorney's office doesn't apply to home rule. Applies, and in the in at least some of the second-class boroughs that it does apply to, it's modified to be, final action. So I don't agree with the municipal attorney's position on this, and I think that the mayoral power of veto does not extend in Anchorage, in a home rule municipality, to motions.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Chairman, relative to this, I intend to move forward and vote to rescind this particular ordinance. I think it needs more work. I think if you're comfortable and you need to justify your vote, then take Dennis' opinion on it. But I think ultimately it's up to us as a body. We stand here responsible for what we pass. No, Elvie, I'm not tonight. What do you need?
No, I'm trying to get in the queue.
Okay. We'll get to you, Mr. Honeman, and Ms. Osiander is ahead of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't in support of this ordinance initially. The full ordinance that was passed was a no vote, and I still stand today belief that this is not necessary based upon other ordinances that we do have that can enforce. The issue at hand on Section 1 is specifically the consequence is a ticket. It's a citation. That's all it is. And it's not going to give the law enforcement officers any effort or opportunity to move a person from the sidewalk that's sitting or lying. They give them a ticket, and that's if they get cooperation. And so based upon everything, I'll even go so far as to say I would support an ordinance that didn't have Section 1 and possibly just Section 2 and 3 standing, even though I'm not fully supportive of that, but I would go so far as to that. I believe this is the right direction, and I believe we should rescind. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Osiander.
I just wanted to clarify, certainly the move to rescind it in itself is, I know that there's a different opinion between the two of them, but after that move comes the motion to amend by deleting Section 1, and that part I think they both agree could be vetoed.
I have no problem with
So,
that.
well, I'm just explaining my rationale here and why I mentioned that. I continue, though, to think that basically it's a strong ordinance. There's a little bit of it that I would like to tweak that I think is too broad, but I think it can be done more simply at another time, so thank you.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Even if I supported this ordinance, which I did not, I think that, and no offense to any of you, that it would be absolutely foolish to not rescind this ordinance, and particularly in light of that memo that we received from the ACLU this afternoon. I mean, every single point that was mentioned in his memo was it was contradictory to some of the things that we were told by Mr. Wheeler. And there is no way in good conscience that I could vote not to rescind this ordinance. So in an effort to make sure that our city is not in any legal jeopardy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Flynn?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to extend an apology to you and all of my colleagues for causing this waste of time. I mistakenly voted against Mr. Trainey's amendment that would have deleted Section 1 when we originally considered this, because I didn't believe that my colleagues would pass an unnecessary piece of legislation. I was wrong. I'm sorry. So I will make my pledge right here now. If we move to rescind, if we vote successfully to rescind, I'll support this S version we have in front of us, and I'll try to be better at predicting outcomes in the future.
Mr. Birch?
I think we're chewing up a lot of time over something that we've already discussed at length and without a lot of new information. And I speak against rescinding this and urge a no vote. Thank you.
Mr. Trainey?
Mr. Chairman, one final note before we vote on this. If you took a look at what happened the night we voted on it, take a look at the letter from ACLU today. Your vote today determines how much we're going to have to pay when it goes to court and we lose. This is a defective ordinance. It does not need to go into effect. We need to modify it and make it better. We have an S version that will do exactly that. The only thing we can do now is rescind this thing. Otherwise, get your pocketbooks ready and have another executive session where we're going to have to pay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Seeing that there's no one else in the queue, please vote.
Yes.
That fails 6-5.
We are now, let's see, it's after 6.
Madam Chair?
Just a second. I'm conferring on when to take our dinner break.
Oh,
because I
okay.
think there'll be a fair number of people here for fireworks, and I just didn't want to necessarily split it in the middle.
Okay. Well, I was just going to make a motion to
Go
combine the public hearing on items 13A and 13B.
And I concur with that totally. I think, though, that it might be wiser to take the break now.
Hey, you're the chair.
So with that, we're going to take about a 20-25-minute recess. We will come back to fireworks. That could be taken several ways, too, couldn't it? Session. The next item on our agenda is the fireworks issues. And we already had a motion from Mr. Flynn to combine 13A and 13B for public hearing. So if there's no objection from the body, that's what we'll do. So at this point, I'm going to open the public hearing for AO 121 and AO 117. That's the two versions for modifying the fireworks ordinance. So you can speak on either one that you'd like. And just to remind you again, there is no ordinance here tonight that repeals fireworks completely. Basically, both Mr. Honeman and Mr. Trainey's version and my version just add different conditions. So, with that, I'm opening the public hearing. When you come forward, if you could start with your name and spelling your name, that would be helpful. Anyone like to speak to us on these? Just come on down to the microphone.
Good evening. My name is Kirsten Barrett. That's spelled KirstenBarrett, and I want to speak to the matter of the proposal to limit the fireworks to areas that are greater than 200 feet from a building. My concern with that restriction is that it does not address the noise issue, which is the one that has been the most serious in my neighborhood. In the previous year, the bombardment of noise started around 9:30, which is after a lot of kids in the neighborhood, including mine, go to bed. And it went on for 4 hours. And I'm wondering if instead of a distance limit, there could be a time limit or a limitation that constrains that open period when you can let off fireworks to 1 hour maybe. Because it certainly would have been a lot easier to hold my daughter with earplugs in her ear, lying in bed, not going to sleep at all, for a much shorter period of time.
Okay.
Is that under consideration at all, or is it possible?
Well, anything can be amended that's before us, but it's not right now language in either one. But thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Trin, the noise isn't in the title, you're right.
Madam Chair, my name is David McCargo, last name spelled MCCARGO, and I've had a fair amount of correspondence with the Assembly over this when it came up the last time, and I'm going to just echo what some of my comments were then. The first problem that I have with ordinances like this, and this is a long concern of mine generally with municipal ordinances, is the enforceability of the ordinance. I just don't think this or any other of the ordinances, the one that's in existence now, are enforceable. And I didn't read 117. I have read 121, and at least 121, in addition to the existing ordinance, I just think are enforceable. That's problem number one. Two, and sort of ancillary to that, is that the police have better things to do. I don't know how many times over the years I've called APD on various matters, including some pretty serious ones, and it's almost never that we get a officer out to my neighborhood. And I think the police will tell you that, especially at times like on New Year's Eve, they have better things to do than be going around, even if they could, to enforce the fireworks ordinance. Three is the safety issue. Last year, and this is by no means the first time, and it was like a war zone, and I have been in war zones. And I had a bottle rocket hit the window. The smoke from that is still on the window. A number of years ago, I had a rocket land on the roof. It was a dry year. Now, mind you, this was not during the winter. It was during the summer. And I had to get up on a roof. It's a flat tar paper roof. And a fire could have easily happened up there. My next issue is the noise issue, and noise is a big consideration for me in this town, and I've pointed out to the Assembly over the years some examples of where I consider Anchorage to be a very, very noisy city, and this just compounds the matter. And in the past, people have brought up the notion of post-traumatic stress disorder. I think this is a real issue, and today I went online and I Googled, and you can do the same thing, and I Googled fireworks and post-traumatic stress disorder. There are a lot of real technical papers out there that support the notion that fireworks do cause or can contribute to PTSD. To wind this up, my view of this is that I would not pass these ordinances because I really don't think that they're going to add or subtract much from the existing ordinance, and I hope that the Assembly will sunset the ordinance that is already on the books. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Lisa Maxon, Lisa-Maxon, and I would like to plant the seed in the minds of the people here and all the assembly people. The idea that we could somehow encourage the public to go to a location that is very large where people can be setting off fireworks in a place that anybody who has the post-syndrome problem would have a choice not to be in that location when this was going to be happening. And also, I'm definitely for not having them in neighborhoods or shrinking the time down where it would be limited to 1 or 2 hours maximum. But at the same time, I also know that the police have a lot better things to do with their time during those evenings, 4th of July and New Year's, and would wish that they could be doing other duties in town other than watching over that. So that would be what I would say. Thanks.
Thank you.
My name is Linda Kellen, also known as Linda Kellen Beagle. This past January, a talk radio host accused the Anchorage Daily News of lying about the nature of a tragic fireworks injury. The ADN's Kyle Hopkins did a story on the man who lost his hand last year in a fireworks accident and had a picture of the shells and the launcher that the man was using. The host claimed that those large, dangerous-looking shells could not possibly be legal, that they were really military issue, and the victim was military, and that ADN was not factual. It didn't take long for the host's own fans to start calling in to correct his ignorance. Yes, they were indeed legal. Fireworks of that size were indeed called shells, and while it was a mistake in the use of the fireworks that caused the man's accident, they were indeed dangerous. This talk show host ended up making several more comments about how dangerous they appeared to be, very much changing his tone by the end. The state of Alaska allows the category of pyrotechnics formerly called Class C to be sold through retail outlets. According to the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, consumer fireworks include shells and mortars, multiple tube devices, Roman candles, rockets, sparklers, firecrackers with no more than 50 milligrams of powder, and novelty items such as snakes, airplanes, ground spinners, helicopters, fountains, and party poppers. Alaska is in a minority of states, along with the more rural southern part of the U.S., that allows all of these fireworks. However, even in states where the law is similar, either state or local regulations do not allow this entire list to be used in urban centers. For whatever reason, it seems to me that many in the municipality of Anchorage refuse to accept the fact that Anchorage is no longer a frontier town, but an urban environment. This fireworks ordinance is a perfect example of that denial. I celebrated New Year's Eve last year in South Anchorage. I discovered that while folks can control where they set off the large fireworks, the airborne ones, they cannot always control where they end up. I saw showers of sparks come down on my roof more than once. My husband, daughter, and I had to clean up our yard first thing the next morning so our dog wouldn't eat what was left of my neighbor's fireworks all over my yard. And while I appreciate folks enjoying their right to celebrate, their right ends and our rights begin at the edge of our property. While I appreciate the attempt by Mr. Honeman to ease the problem, I believe that Ms. Osiander's ordinance more closely deals with the issue, providing a concrete distance from non-participating homes. However, I don't believe either is the best solution. A better solution to me is one I experienced in the cities and suburbs where I grew up. I would like to encourage an ordinance banning use of airborne fireworks in the municipality of Anchorage while allowing ground ordnance and sparklers. This would permit folks to celebrate the new year without infringing on the rights of others. Thank you.
Was this a picture you submitted?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the one where the guy lost his hand, so.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello. My name is Christina Mounce, Mounce. And I would just like to say that this is a tough situation because you can pass an ordinance about fireworks, but the feasibility of actually enforcing that on New Year's Eve when there's drunk driving, fights, other violence is going to be really hard. When I was growing up, I used to love lighting off fireworks with my friends, And my friends, a lot of them actually end up going to the service, and now some of them are home with PTSD. And if I would have realized then the effects of PTSD and how a firework can trigger that, I wouldn't have been out there lighting fireworks. I think I would support passing this ordinance. However, I just don't see how effectively it can be enforced. Anchorage is very big, and there's a lot of issues on New Year's Eve. I would like to say that it may be proper use of some tax money to do a public service announcement to inform people that, Alaska, we have the biggest amount of vets per capita. PTSD is a real issue, and fireworks can trigger unwanted effects and unintended consequences in people. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Georgia Costura, Kustura, and I'd like to just reiterate what has already been said and just put it in a different framework and ask that maybe we all have a little bit of compassion for people that don't share the desire to participate in fireworks celebration on New Year's Eve, and think about people who are troubled by it, folks with dementia, people who have young children who don't understand what's happening, the assisted living facilities and the other areas, including this amendment that you've proposed, Ms. Osiander, is setting aside special areas and special classes of people to be protected. And there are many people in the community that can't opt out of this because of where they live. And so I would just ask that you allow this existing ordinance to sunset, and that before anything is undertaken to legalize fireworks in the future, you consider the fact that while it was unenforceable when it was totally illegal, it was much less prevalent. And I can tell you last year at 7 o'clock, I live out in the country, at 7 o'clock there were explosions all over the neighborhood. It ended about 4 a.m. They not only did not adhere to the time limit, but they were given basically a blank check to do whatever they want. And so I think it's a terribly slippery slope, and I wish we could go back to the day when people were a little more considerate of their neighbors. And I strongly encourage you to show some compassion for your neighbors. They're not wacky people with sleep disorders. They have real issues that need to be addressed, and we should care about them all. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Kathy Gliva, Gliva. I would like to see this ordinance go down with the sunset. I just pulled out of the paper, Celebrate New Year's Eve, and on here it has show in a box. Celebrate this New Year's Eve with a show in a box. Light one fuse and a series of beautiful colors fill the sky, hundreds of feet in the air. At the stroke of midnight, bring the new year in with a bang. I have $6,000 worth of hay in my barns right now, and they cannot control where those sparklers that go up in the sky, the rockets, where those are going to land. I really would not want to have a fire in my barn on New Year's Eve, and I don't see how you can prevent that when you allow people to shoot these off on New Year's Eve. The IBEW has trained pyrotechnicians that come to shoot off fireworks in town, and this is a choice people make if they want to go and see these fireworks. They also have a fire truck on hand, I think at $150 an hour. My neighbors don't have that, and I really, really think you need to reconsider this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Deborah Baines, Baines. I operate a hands-on animal education program here in Anchorage called The Learning Farm. I have a conservation plan with NRCS, Anchorage Anchorage Soil and Water, a multi-animal facility license. I'm federally regulated with the USDA. I'm licensed, permitted, registered, and insured. I have a variety of animals, farm animals, that the children are able to handle and to learn about, including sheep, goats, calves, chickens, 2 potbelly pigs, horses, and ponies. I'm on the board for the Alaska Equine Rescue and currently have a severely malnutritioned mare recovering at my home. A number of my other animals are also from rescue organizations. For years, I've been involved in animal-related activities, rescue programs, horse handicap programs, over 2 decades of bringing animals into schools and senior centers. Many of the children that come to my farm are special needs children. Besides the farm animals, I also have 24 sled dogs. I'm on the board for the Alaska Sled Dog and Racing Association as head of their junior program. Last year's New Year's night was like a war zone all around my home. Many of my animals were inconsolable. It was frustrating for me not to be able to comfort my animals. I am the caretaker for these animals. I see your job as the caretaker for the people of this city. I ask you to ask yourselves whether this ordinance is genuinely in the best interest of the general population of this city. Has entertainment really become so important that we are willing to disregard the health and well-being, both mental and physical, of the citizens and its animals that reside here? Thank you.
Thank you. Just a minute. Mr. Honeman has a question for you.
Yes.
Quick question. What part of town are...
I'm off Huffman Road, just a mile up Huffman.
Okay. And prior to last year, there was an all-out ban on in the municipality for fireworks.
It was nothing. It was minimal. I lived next to that Lake Otis gravel pit, and there would be people shooting off in there. But it was just absolutely nonstop from, like I said, about 7 till 4 in the morning. It was just, and totally surrounded me.
Okay. And no one contacted you to say they were going to be shooting off fireworks in the neighborhoods, or none of your neighbors?
No.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marilyn Hauser. It's Houser. I was very disappointed when the Assembly voted last year to overturn the prohibition on personal use fireworks. The change happened very quickly at a very busy time of year. I've lived in Anchorage for almost 34 years and do not recall a time when personal use fireworks were legal. We are not talking sparklers and firecrackers. The sought-after personal use fireworks of today are mortars, rockets, artillery shells, and helicopters, among other things. Guerrilla Fireworks' own website uses words like obnoxious screams, exploding, banging, and thundering to describe their products with names like migraine, poison, and evil, wicked, mean, and nasty. The December 31st, 2010 Anchorage Daily News had a photo of 4 men with their fireworks haul from the Guerrilla Fireworks stand, and the quote of one of the men is, "Destruction is the function." This is the photograph with his quote. The loud explosions from personal use fireworks throughout our neighborhoods over the course of several hours are a significant imposition. There's no way to predict where or when the explosions will occur. With a professional fireworks display, at least there is a specified time and location. The random nature of personal use fireworks is distressing to animals and people with noise sensitivities and neurological disorders, including, but not limited to, combat veterans from our armed services, and autism, dementia, and Alzheimer's patients. It shows a considerable lack of courtesy to people whose home may be no more than 20 feet away. We're talking about negative effects on our neighbors. That people use fireworks on New Year's Eve, even when they are legal, is not a reason to make them legal. That's akin to saying we won't have speed limits of 20 or 25 miles an hour in residential neighborhoods. Who adheres to those anyway? Or it's really rather inconvenient to make arrangements for a taxi or designated driver on New Year's Eve. Why not make drinking and driving legal on New Year's Eve, just for a couple hours? The negative effect of explosions from fireworks on people is very real. My father is a World War II veteran and very proud of his service, but he has never liked fireworks. Bang, bang, boom, boom, he'd say. We never went to fireworks displays as a family. A neighbor of mine is a Vietnam veteran, and his wife has told me how she is dreading this New Year's Eve because of how difficult an evening it will be with the fireworks explosions all over our neighborhood. She said last year was horrible for him and her. Short of a reversal of last year's decision to legalize personal use fireworks, I support AO number 2011-121 submitted by Ms. Osiander. Then I would like the legalization provision to be allowed to sunset, which I understand that would be sunset in 2013, as the way the ordinance is now written.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. There are no questions. Anybody else?
My name is Linda Harter, Harter. In our common experience, we go through life, we collect information, we change our minds about things. We do it every day. Where you shop, what kind of car you buy, decisions you make, and that's considered a good thing because you have more information, you're wiser. Politicians are loath to do that because somehow it reflects on your lack of deliberation in the first instance. When Mr. Trainee brought forth this ordinance, he said he was doing it to make good a campaign promise. I would ask those of you who voted for this ordinance that brought this terror to our city to reflect upon, who were not part of the deal that Mr. Trainee has with his constituents. That's not part of your promise. To remember the promise you made the citizens of Anchorage when you were sworn in. People do not like this ordinance. It was a misguided experiment. Hopefully this will be the end of it this New Year's. Madam Chairman, I'd be glad to respond to any relevant questions.
There are
Thank
no
you.
questions.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Ma'am, my name is Neil Wood, W-O-O-D. I've been sitting here and listening. My son has taken a class, and he's here to basically watch what's going on. I would like to comment on this. The people who come up here and spoke feelingly, and they spoke it the way they see it, and they have a great many concerns. But the question everybody needs to be asking is how many people actually did get hurt, how much people or how much property did get damaged during the last year, how many traffic accidents from rockets bursting across the streets, and did we all talk to our neighbors about this before any type of celebration? Because really, what we're looking at here, even in the short haul, even with the professional, is acting out our heritage. Really. So, yeah, we need to look at a lot of things about this, but more importantly, we need to look at the safety concerns. Not individual safety, but the entire community safety. Case in point would be if you're storing the fireworks before you set them off, what happens if you have a fire? Is it more dangerous to the fire department going in with those shells and those fireworks stored in a house? Okay. Now the case in point is for the police, you have a young man or somebody shoot a flare or a rocket over top of the freeway or the street and cause accidents. These things need to be looked at really hard, and we need to look at speaking to our neighbors, making sure they understand not to burn our stuff down. to pick up behind themselves. That's all I have to say about it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to testify about this? Anyone else? Hearing and seeing no one. Sorry. Public hearing is closed.
Madam Chair, moved 2011-117, 13B.
All right, 117 has been moved. Is there, Mr. Honeman, you want to speak to that?
Yes, and I just wanted to, there was a comment from earlier, and I wanted to kind of mention back that already the ordinance precludes shooting off fireworks between, other than between 9:30 and 1 a.m. And so we're talking at about 5-hour period on one night, and absent, I think it was, the question was, does it sunset in 2013? Technically, December 2012. So we had it in 2010, 2011, so December of 2012, prior to the new year of 2012-13. That's when it'll sunset between. Absent that, people ask me, what's your issue behind the fireworks? I can tell you that after the ordinance was passed last year, and I was willing to go along, in fact, it was my motion, if you recall, in this body that allowed for the sunset provision, and also reducing the hours, because initially I believe it was from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. So the mover of the amendment of the ordinance, Mr. Traney, was not objecting, and we actually passed it that way. So I knew there was room for some movement, if you will, or chances to amend this at a later point. It was done in such a late portion of the year that I was very concerned that we wouldn't have enough time to do the PSAs and the education and the information to the community. And in fact, I think that's what happened. So we had this avalanche of communication shortly after that. And in some cases, I know I answered my phone a couple of instances in the middle of the night, December 31st of last year. And I heard quite a few folks from the mobile home communities that were really concerned, and that's why the impetus of the motion here tonight on the 117, which would prohibit the mobile home parks. And here's what the ordinance says, so it's fairly clear that if you don't own the mobile home park, you really shouldn't be shooting them off there anyway. But there was some concern that folks may actually own the mobile home itself that may be placed in a park that's being rented for the space. And so I believe that the language needed to be clarified to say not in mobile home parks for that reason. So that's the reason for the justification for this particular ordinance. I guess in general, and I think you said it very clearly, Madam Chair, which it's not, there were three things that we could do tonight, and one was to completely delete the ordinance, abolish it, if you will. That I didn't see happening. The other one is to amend the ordinance as it allows under our current potential 2 ordinance years, and the third would be to do nothing and allow it to continue through, with no changes. I'd like to say we really can't legislate common sense and good judgment. We just can't. People have the right to make bad choices and bad decisions. I think the gentleman set it up here clearly, which is, I'd like to think that we all get along with our neighbors and our communities, and that we would be able to communicate that we're going to have a party or we're going to shoot off fireworks and then find out if there's any issues. In fact, it is an obligation and responsibility to make sure you're not in prohibition of what's stated in the ordinance already. Assisted living homes, hospitals, gas stations, parks, schools. There are some exclusions already posted in the ordinance. And certainly we can't legislate people being considerate or compassionate. So I think that's the difficulty behind any ordinance that allows something, and any attempts to regulate becomes an issue that I think you had mentioned earlier, which is very tough to enforce. I can tell you that as a practitioner in law enforcement for as many years in this town as almost as I've lived here, longer than that obviously, that we had a zero tolerance and absolutely prohibited. People were still shooting off fireworks, every part of town, challenges, arguments, disturbances. Officers just were not able to keep up with the amount that were going on. And this was, in my opinion, a reasonable opportunity to experiment, to see how this works out. And absent any affirmative action by this body after this New Year's Eve, it may or may not go back to the way it was before. But I do believe that this amendment here would help alleviate the question of whether or not someone could get on the roof or outside the door of their mobile home and shoot them off. I think this makes a very clear definition, and so I'd urge support.
Mr. Traney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the effort to compromise on this issue, I'll support Paul.
We can't hear you, sir.
In the issue to compromise this issue, I'll support Paul bringing forward this particular amendment, 2011-117. We're talking about 8,760 hours in a year. This is 5 hours. And some people may not like it, some people do like it, but we're dealing with 5 hours. And this is the last year. This is in effect before I have to bring it back again next year, which I intend to do by about April of next year, and see what modifications we can make to it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Johnston?
Yes, I just have a technical question of our Assembly Council. I noticed that in the 121 ordinance that you specifically state that this ordinance is subject to the same sunset date, but in this ordinance that is not in here. Does it make any difference?
It doesn't.
Through the chair, I didn't think it made a difference. But in the second one that you refer to, the sponsor asked me specifically to reiterate that it was in there. In the first one, that it's not in there, it's not changing any part of the original ordinance, and that's why I didn't think to put it in. But I've asked Dennis for his opinion on that also.
Through the chair, Assemblymember Johnson, it would be nice if that language were actually in 117, just to avoid some confusion for the code revisor, because otherwise H in 117 would hang there while the rest of it was repealed. I don't think it's a huge deal, but it would be nice for historical purposes if that were in there.
Anything else, Ms. Johnson?
Well, just that being said, I think we probably should at least amend this to include the same language that is in Ordinance 121, and it is on page 2 between line 13 and 15.
I'll second that.
That amendment is before us. Is there discussion on the amendment? Mr. Holman was the second.
I was the second.
And Ms. Johnston made the motion to include the language regarding sunset date. Seeing no discussion, please vote on that amendment. Ms. Gray Jackson?
Yes.
That amendment passed unanimously. Anything else, Ms. Johnston? Seeing no one else in queue. Oh, Mr. Flynn?
Sorry, one more technical question, Madam Chair. I believe if I understand the process correctly, if we pass the piece of legislation in front of us and then subsequently pass the proposal you've made, that supersedes the first one, correct?
Actually, the second one includes the language in the first one.
It's not quite identical, but
Well, it was the
close.
intent that it be identical. So we could ask, that's a good attorney question, Mr. Flynn.
Oh, maybe it is identical. It's just that you set it out with italics, but the other one isn't. So I think it is the same. Sorry.
All right. Anything else, Mr. Flynn? So I guess my view is it could be cumulative. Is that correct to the attorneys? If both versions were passed, would they be cumulative?
Through the chair, if you were to come back and pass 121, you might want to remove I in your version because it's already been passed through H in Mr. Honeman's version. If you pass them both together, then we have two paragraphs that we put in the code that say the same thing.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Flynn? Mr. Birch?
I would just say that the memorandum that comes here, it indicates that, I think this was referred to as an experiment, and it indicates here that the memo from Mr. Hahnemann that the physical construction and the mobile home park creates an extreme risk of fire and potential explosion if fireworks are sold, possessed, or used in these mobile home parks. And I'm thinking, Well, I just don't think it's a good way to do business. I was a no vote on this last year, and I just, it can't sunset soon enough. Thank you.
All right, seeing no one else in queue, please vote on 13B as amended. Ms. Gray Jackson?
Yes.
That item passed 9-2. We are now at, let's see. I don't know if there's a desire to move 13A or not.
Move 13A.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Mr. Trainee.
Thank you, ma'am. I think 13A is a defective ordinance. The way I view it, it's class warfare between those large lots we have in town and the rest of Anchorage. It would only allow it to occur on the hillside, Eagle River, Chugach. There are very few lots that big in Anchorage. And how are we going to enforce it? Are you going to go out with 200-yard rulers, 200-feet rulers, to try and measure it? And where you've got here, it has to be cleaned up within 12 hours. We don't have anybody to make sure that happens. I just don't think it makes common sense to pass this ordinance. Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Osiander.
Mr. Trainee, what I tried to do with this was to respond to some of the people who called me who expressed concerns similar to what we heard this evening. I had sympathy with folks who feel their home is their castle, and they were telling me stories about fireworks landing on their roof, about fireworks being shut off right outside their bedroom window for extended periods of time. And so this is my first attempt to deal with it. I don't know if 200, I'd pick 200 out of the air. I absolutely tell you that. And it could very well be 10, it could be 50, but I think it should be something. And the cleanup, I heard from people who said that their backyard, the street in front of their house, was just covered with a mess. And if it's not 12 hours, then, I'd suggest amending it to more. I attempted to deal with what I heard from the community, and also this is a compromise to me because, as you know, I wasn't supportive in the first place.
I know, ma'am.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Madam Chair?
Yes, we'll put you in the queue, Ms. Gray Jackson. I have Mr. Trainee back.
Debbie, I'll take you up on that. Let's change on line 28, a location within 10 feet of any dwelling. Since 200 was arbitrary, let's try 10 feet. That way it doesn't end up becoming class warfare in Anchorage.
Do we have a second? Hearing none, that motion dies. Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move, per our earlier discussion, that we delete lines 33 through 39 on page 1 to avoid duplication.
Remove between line 33 and 39 on page 1?
That is correct.
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Any other discussion, Mr. Flynn? Okay, we will vote on the amendment.
Yes.
That passes 9-2. Ms. Gray Jackson, you're in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make a few comments in general on the fireworks ordinance. Initially, when I voted yes on the ordinance a few years ago, we'd heard from the community, and half the community was in favor of fireworks and half weren't. And then there were some amendments that were made to the ordinance. One was the sunset clause, and another amendment was the time limitations. And based on those two amendments, I felt really comfortable making the decision that I did. I'm really, really pleased to see that we have the ordinance before us, again, before New Year's Eve, because things have changed a little bit. Frankly, I've been reading my emails, and most of the emails that I've gotten are from folks in the community who absolutely want to see and end the fireworks. And we know that that's not going to happen tonight, but I've told folks when I responded to them, remember, there's a sunset clause. And personally, I support what's happening tonight. That's why I voted for Mr. Horniman and Mr. Trainey's ordinance, because it does make some adjustments to what is about to happen. But I also look forward to the discussion that we're going to have, and I appreciate Mr. Trainey saying that he's going to bring something forward as early as April, so we can have a lot of time to discuss the sunsetting of this ordinance way before December 31st, 2012. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Holman.
I'm going to make an attempt. I appreciate the chair's laying some new information out on the reference this ordinance to try to establish some, for lack of better words, controls. So I'll make the amendment to location within 50 feet of any dwelling, and under subsection, that'd be on line 28. And then also on line 42, move from 12 to 24 hours to clean up.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion with a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing, Mr. Birch, you have a comment on that, on the motion? Okay. Let's vote.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
That motion fails 6-5. Mr. Birch.
I just, speaking in support of the ordinance amendment that's in front of us, or the ordinance that's in front of us, we're spending a whole lot of time on this, and it just doesn't seem reasonable to me. I think Mr. Hahnemann referred to this as an experiment, and then talked about the high level of risk associated with it. Well, whether you're in a mobile home or you've got an outbuilding or a backyard or anything else, it just if you're too tight with your neighbor, you shouldn't be zooming bottle rockets across the street at them. And I think the 200 feet is a reasonable approach, and I am in support of the ordinance. Thank you.
Mr. Trainey.
I'm not going to support this. This is a defective ordinance. It's not enforceable, and all it does is pit one side of the town against the other. I'm not going to support it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Seeing no one else in the queue, please vote.
Mr. Jackson?
No.
That motion fails 6-5.
Thank you very much. Moving on. Our next ordinance is 13C. This is AO 120. It's an ordinance amending Municipal Code 26.80 to increase tipping fees for solid waste disposal, accompanied by AM 687. This was deferred from a previous meeting, and we have not. Have we had finished the public hearing on this, Madam Clerk? It's continued. All right. So if you'd like to speak to us on this matter, please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Bob Mayer, M-A-I-E-R. I would like to take this opportunity to read into the record of the Anchorage Assembly the first two paragraphs on page 26 of your own commissioned MRW report released in 2010. The title is Solid Waste Services. Anchorage Municipal Code 2610-065 states, if in any year a municipal utility has or is anticipated to have surplus revenues accruing from its operations, a portion of those surplus earnings may be distributed by inclusion in the general government budget for the subsequent year. For 2007, Solid Waste Services incurred a loss of $2 million. In an email transmittal from Mark Madden, Director SWS, to Sharon Weddleton on August 7, 2008, Mr. Madden proposed the SWS disposal utility not pay a revenue distribution for 2008, citing the 2007 loss. Ms. Weddleton disapproved his request, stating, except a 6.4 plus earthquake or the sale of SWS, the likelihood of refuse or SWS avoiding paying their property taxes is basically nil. The Solid Waste Services ratepayers now have the fortune of being able to look back at the last series of rate cases in 2007 and 2008 and study what the Anchorage Assembly used for justification to the Solid Waste Services ratepayers for those rate increases, and now compare those figures to what actually happened. I speak specifically to the portion sold as catch-up monies for the care and closure liability. I would ask to bring to your attention the 2007 Certified Annual Financial Report. Shown is a future landfill closure liability of $16,596,153 for the Anchorage Regional Landfill. Now, this $16.5 million liability, as defined by permit applications, is what the ratepayers had paid since the opening of the ARL, roughly $2.84 per ton built into the rate base. The money had been set aside in a closure reserve fund, as defined by the permit application, in order to protect the longevity of those monies. Also in the 2007 CAFR, under the title Restricted Assets, Landfill Post-Closure Cash Reserve, a zero balance is listed. Not $1, not 1 penny in the Closure Reserve Fund for this already paid for $16.5 million liability in 2007. Materials handed out in conjunction with Assembly Memorandum 637-2007 and Assembly Resolution 2007-231, both which passed this body on December 18, 2007, showed a $2.5 million balance in the Care and Closure Fund for 2007 with a 4-year catch-up funding schedule. Now, a third scenario for funding the care and closure activities was created with the passage of Anchorage Ordinance 2008-46, which extended the full funding out to December 31st, 2015, which raises its own set of serious questions. Since the opening of the Anchorage Regional Landfill over 20 years ago, this Care and Closure Fund has been fully funded by the ratepayers. The ratepayers now have the ability, utilizing numbers in the CAFR, to compare what the Anchorage Assembly told us in 2007 and 2008 and see if the statements balance.
Mr. Mayor, you're going to have to summarize, and your time's up.
The ratepayers also have the findings of the Anchorage Assembly's own MRW report, which acknowledged the illegal movement of money. All of the illegally taken money needs to be paid back to Solid Waste Services ratepayers, and then a proper revenue requirement study needs to be conducted before any more rate increases are approved. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Is there anyone else who'd like to testify on this matter?
Lisa Maxon, M-A-X-O-N. Yes. If everything that he has said is true, then no rate should be raised to the payers. but I don't really understand how this is to be done. If lawyers have to be hired to have the process go forward so that if there's a price increase, that it doesn't go to the payers. Is that true?
I think we're going to be talking about that in just
Great.
a few minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to testify? Hearing and seeing no one, public hearing is closed.
Move the S version.
That's before us. Discussion? Mr. Starr.
I'm a little bit challenged. Last week we approved the budgets for across the municipality and enterprise budgets, and just a affirmation was their budget at solid waste services had a $5 rate increase expectation to produce a balanced budget. From my understanding, I see we're asking for a sunset and a rate continuation of another $3 to take it up to basically an $8 increase. And so, well, explain it to me then, because I see additional revenues over and above their budget needs for the upcoming year, and I can see about going to the RCA and all the other stuff, but I see a couple things that don't make sense to me. First, the overfunding of the recycling funds and the continuation of that, but it still appears to me that we're going to over-collect revenues if we do both phases of the rate increase.
Do you want, who are you directing this question to?
Well, I guess to the administration. Ms. Frasca, what is the over and above the $5 increase due to their budget? Does it give them more money than we approved?
Through the chair, Mr. Starr, the budget that you did approve was based on a $5 increase to the tipping fee. And as I recall, it brought them pretty close to being in balance for 2012 with that $5.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Trombley?
I just have a motion to amend the document.
Go ahead, sir.
Line 23, 5650 goes down to 56. And this is on the first page. And line 24 from 66 down to 60. Oh, I'm sorry, 6650 down to 66.
Second.
And one more.
Okay.
Sorry. And on page 2.
Wait a minute.
Sure.
The clerk's trying to catch up. All right.
Not a problem. Let me know.
Line, the 5650 to what?
$56.
To plain $56. And then the 6650 to 66?
Yes, Madam
All
Chair.
right. And then go ahead on the next page.
Page 2, line 23, from $1.50 to $1.
All right. Is there a second?
Yes, second.
And that's before us then. Mr. Starr, yeah, push your screen, Mr. Starr, would you? Thank you. All right. Mr. Trombley, do you want to speak to that?
It speaks for itself.
Okay.
Mark, would you like to speak to it? Or?
Through the chair, Mr. Trombley, the F version as proposed would result in a net income for the utility of about $33,000. By changing that, by reducing that 50 cents, basically we end up with a net income of a negative $78,000. So it's about a little over $100,000 difference between the two scenarios.
Okay. Mr. Flynn, you're next in queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think perhaps part of the confusion over what's in balance and what's out of balance revolves around how we fund their capital program in the next few years, and Mr. Madden can speak to this in more detail if you wish him to. There's going to be a series of build-outs on additional cells for the future use of the facility, and we can either debt finance those or rate finance those or some combination thereof. So that's part of the reason for the slightly higher tipping fee than you were expecting. As to the recycling piece on page 2, as you said, Madam Chair, a lot of things sort of materialized at the last minute. I'm not sure everyone had the opportunity to read the email sent by Alpar. They had actually asked us to maintain the $3 tipping fee to fund recycling programs, but after careful negotiations between myself, Ms. Johnston, and them, they've acquiesced to the $1.50 level, and I would hate to knock that out of balance. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Starr.
Well, I guess, Mr. Flynn, in the debate forum here, won't we also see additional revenues come online, though, for the methane gas plant that adds, estimated on the low side, $1.3 million? So, why not wait? I see perhaps a cash flow, but I also see a balanced budget from last weekend. So, if you're trying to start to bank money ahead, that may be proactively important. But you haven't done revenue forecasts. We haven't been through beta testing, and I'd like to know where that contract's going to start paying off. So, just a note of caution, we're beating up the locals here with a pretty good rate increase across their utility bills as well, and now we're going to hit them up at the curbside or the solid waste when we dump their commercial can too. So I just a little bit more note of caution, and that's my conservative view.
Ms. Johnston?
Just to sort of explain the S version, and I understand everybody's concern. First of all, the increase with the S version, the tipping fee increase, is $5 overall because we're dropping the recycling fee by $1.50, and we're raising the other by $3.50. But that being said, we also, because Mr. Flynn and I have been having a discussion on the recycling fee and how much really is it appropriate to charge consumers for recycling and what are they getting out of it. And if you notice in the AIM, we've discussed that up to 50 cents of that recycling fee will go to the landfill closure fund if we coordinate on our budget of the recycling. Once we've gone through the due diligence, and as I told this body, we will be having a work session and we will be doing the due diligence of the recycling budget. And so that could be any time within this quarter or this year that we actually have a $1 recycling fee. Back to the whole capital needs of this program, there is a large, intensive capital needs aspect of the landfill, and that is building out these cells. And I, for one, would rather see these cells built out through operational money and through having a good capital reserve fund than going to bond on it. I understand your issues and I understand your concerns, and we have included in 2013 the funding from the methane. I also have always been concerned about going back to the rate payers and having them go through the regulatory process too many times. If this body might be aware that I have stopped having rate increases for solid waste services over the last 3 years, and as long as I'm on this body, I will try to continue to do that on a much more long-term basis. So that's why I compromised with Mr. Flynn and basically went to what the administration had first proposed, which was a $5 increase in tipping fee.
Ms. Osiander.
Before I make my comments, I'd like the administration to address the comment from the speaker about the Care and Closure Fund. My understanding is we are committing at least $2 million a year to that fund and have been making progress. So, Mr. Vacalis, whoever.
Ms. Osiander, through the chair, we, on an annual basis, make payments that are based on the amount of landfill volume that we use in accordance with GASB 18. And the municipal code which we created back in 2008. That fund that we created in 2008 is now, if I might bear with me for a moment here, the balance in that fund is refuse collection. Is approximately $5.7 million that we've put in there since 2008.
Okay, thank you. And I do want to commend Mr. Mayor, was one of the people that brought this to our attention at first, and it's we've got to fix that problem, but I think we've got a plan. We're working towards fixing that. I support this amendment because of two things. Basically, it increases the tipping fee so that everybody's garbage bill is going to go up somewhat. I would like to limit that increase somewhat. If you recall, we already cut $1.5 million from AWWU. We cut $1 million from ML&P, and a department that basically has a lot of opportunity to see gains that have not yet been accounted for is getting an increase and not a cut. Not only do we have the methane gas coming online, and we just have estimates really of what we're going to get, but additionally, I just read a very comprehensive report from the Solid Waste Advisory Board where they talked about additional things that we could look at to achieve cost savings. The ground cover analysis being one, working with AWWU so that the liquid that came off the leachate, pardon me if my terms are not correct here, you're talking already with the military to get a sewer line there, which would potentially decrease costs substantially. So I think there's some opportunities within this budget. I applaud our enterprise committee. I think you guys have done just phenomenal work. It's just this one time I don't quite agree with you. I think it's good to hold the regulatory commission's actions to not going back to them every 6 months because it's expensive and a hassle to do. So we've got the $3 now. It's going to sunset. If we give them the 5 additional they're requesting and don't let all of that sunset but just part of it, I think that we're increasing but not increasing more than we have to. The amount of income that we've gotten from that recycling fee has been more than sufficient to the cost that we have incurred. And I generally don't think it's a good idea for government to take in more money than it needs. And in this case, we've done it. So what this would end up doing if this amendment passes is we'd increase the tipping fee to $6 and we'd reduce the recycling fee to $1. So the whole increase, and I do call it an increase because that recycling fee is going to vanish, would be $7 instead of $8. So it's a minimal reduction to what's being proposed. I urge support. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no one else in the queue, we're going to vote on Mr. Trombley's amendment.
Ask Elvie. Ask Elvie.
Elvie?
No.
No. That amendment fails. We're back to the original motion. Any comments on the original motion? Seeing none, vote on the original motion, please. Ms. Gray Jackson?
Yes.
That passes 8 to 3.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'm sorry I'm not there to, go and put into the queue, but I'd like to move immediate reconsideration of AO 2011-121 and urge a yes vote.
A yes vote?
We're on 120 yes.
Is that a yes or a no vote?
I'm sorry?
You're urging reconsideration with a yes vote?
Yes vote, yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
she's asking for reconsideration of the fireworks ordinance 121 before the evening is out.
It's point of order. We need to finish this.
I'm sorry, I thought we did finish it. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, we are done with this.
Oh, okay. Okay, Ms. Gray Jackson, basically
You're back, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I move immediate reconsideration of AO 2011-121, and I urge a yes vote. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
At this point, we're being asked for reconsideration of, I'm sorry, it was 121, Ms. Gray Jackson?
Yes, Madam Chair.
13A. All right, please vote if you would like to reconsider 13A.
Yes.
Mr. Birch, do you want to reconsider 13A? She voted in the affirmative, and she would like to have a chance to look at it again, if I remember correctly. So it's appropriate. 1, 2, 3, yes. Okay, that item is before us. Ms. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First off, I want to thank you. I didn't get that opportunity to bring this forward. Okay? And I voted no on the ordinance because I heard from some of my constituents who said, well, it's not going to make any difference. We can't enforce laws now, so why even bother? But sitting here many, many miles away from all of you, I started thinking about it, and I said to myself, well, you know, what about all the emails that you got from folks who wanted to end, which is definitely not going to happen right now? Well, Ms. Gray Jackson, you need to do whatever you can to make the situation better, whether or not anybody thinks it can be enforced. If it's on the books, at least there's a law, and I think that it would really, really make a difference, and that's my reason for asking for reconsideration, and I'm really pleased that we're reconsidering this, and I plan to vote yes this time around. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, Ms. Gray Jackson, there's a question from Mr. Traney about how you voted on 13A, if you were on the prevailing side.
I voted no on 13A.
And no prevailed, so she was on the prevailing side, so it's a valid immediate reconsideration. Right. Thank you, we just got that clarified. All right, so at this point, okay, all right, 13A is back before us. Is there any additional discussion on 13A? Ms. Johnston.
Madam Chair, I have one comment.
Oh,
when we were dealing with 13A, the paragraph dealing with trailer courts, which we already dealt with, was removed. So how does that work with this situation right now?
Well, it was. Oh,
that was going to be my question. Is it the amended version?
Absolutely, if it's possible to deal with the amended version.
All right, we reconsidered the final vote, Ms. Gray Jackson, and in that case, the mobile home park was excluded. So Excellent. It still is excluded. And then the motion on the change in the feet away from dwelling failed, so that is not before us.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. Is there any further discussion? All right, please vote on 13A as amended by deletion of I.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
And this time it passed, 6-5. Thank you, Ms. Gray Jackson. All right.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Gray Jackson, anything else?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. At this point, then, we are on to 14A.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Flynn?
I'd like to move to combine the public hearing on items 14A through 14C, and of course, as you noted, we intend to extend the public hearing to next month.
Very good. That would be my request, too. So is there any objection to combining those public hearings? Seeing none, that's what we'll do. So at this point, if you would like to speak to us on the Turnagain Heights Sanitary Sewer Lateral Improvement District, or the Water Improvement District, or the Special Assessment District in that area, please come forward. and with the understanding that there will not be a final vote tonight, but you can testify. And if you could begin by stating your name and spelling it. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Bob Quist, Q-U-I-S-T.
Okay.
My family and I are property owners of lots 14A and 15A of the Park subdivision and lots 9 and 10 of the Turnican Heights subdivision, which are the subject of this Turnican Sewer Water and Road Improvement District. We have lived in this location for the past 28 years, and for the last 17 years have extensively landscaped and improved lots 9 and 10 as the backyard of our two homes at 3301 and 3315 Iliamna Avenue. Our property is the only property in the 3 improvement districts that has been developed to its highest and best use in harmony with our neighbors. There's never been an attempt to develop lots 9 and 10 beyond anything other than our backyard. In 2003, we initiated the long plat process to replat the 4 lots into 2 lots, one each associated with the 2 existing homes at 3301 and 3315 Iliamna Avenue. While that was working its way through the system, we spoke to the Assembly in 2004 requesting to be removed from the 3 improvement districts because there was no benefit at all to us. At that meeting, there was a motion to remove lots 9 and 10 from the improvement district, but wasn't approved. We ran out of time with the long plat due to an untimely death of a key city employee and the loss of the blue sign-off sheet. So here we are today. The development is done. We have not received any benefit from the completion. It did not increase the value of our homes. On the contrary, it increased our property tax burden and left us with an assessment, if paid over 20 years, is approximately $480,000 just to keep our backyard. What a way to start a retirement. If the assessment gets approved, we will probably lose our backyard to foreclosure because we can't afford to pay these assessments. We have maintained from the onset that we should not be included in the 3 improvement districts. The only reason we were included was to help subsidize the development. We respectfully urge the Assembly to reject the resolution as written and defer action on them so we can finish the replat and work with PM&E and AWW to arrive at assessments that are equitable. We are not seeking to obtain the benefits of special district improvements without paying for them. On the contrary, we are seeking to avoid being saddled with a crippling liability for improvements that have no value to us and add no value to our property. This is an abbreviated summary of what is in the 8-page handout before you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who'd like to testify on these districts? Hearing and seeing no one, I assume your intent from the representatives is to continue?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I'd like then to go ahead and we'll continue the public hearing on these matters until our next meeting. And I really urge anyone who has any specific concerns with these districts to contact either Ms. Drummond down there at the end or Mr. Hall. They are carrying our issue for us on this.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Ms. Drummond.
Mr. Quist brought a handout. I believe he said he brought 11 copies. Are those available to the Assembly?
You should have one. If you don't, we'll check with the clerk here. Okay? With that, special orders, there are none. Unfinished agenda, there is none. Audience participation. If anyone would like to speak to us on any matter that is not on our agenda, please come forward. Excuse me.
Hi, my name is Bryant DeHuson, BRYANT DEHUSSON. Some of you might be aware that last time I was here, I announced that I was considering running for mayor. And some of you might also think that it's a joke. The truth is, though, that our government is a joke. And with that, I'm really pleased, actually, that the Assembly did not repeal the sidewalk ordinance tonight, because it's a very good step in the direction of gentrification and hiding our problems. To that effect, I really do think that the top priority of my administration will be to remove snow from all sidewalks by banning it and possibly fining it until it goes away, or using flamethrowers or something with the APD. I'm not really sure the details, but I'm just going to make it illegal and hope it works out. Thanks.
Anyone else like to speak to us on any matter at this point?
Hello, my name is Christina Mounce, M-O-U-N-C-E, and I would just like to say that I was reading the newspaper today, and I was really disappointed to see that King Sullivan decided to veto the decision that was made here at the last Assembly meeting regarding the 3 positions at Parks and Rec.
We overturned that at the beginning of the meeting.
Oh, did you? Oh, thank you. Well, then I would like to say that there are definitely some people here that think on their own and listen to their constituents. And I thank everybody here that does that. And for those of you that blindly follow the leader, because there are a few people here that do, I would ask you to reconsider why you're here and the people you actually represent. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to us?
Hello, I'm Dan Dudley, D-U-D-L-E-Y. As it's nearing Christmas, these toy-shaped, spinning, rotating type power toothbrushes are now being promoted to parents as gifts. You can see that they look like toys. So parents believe that they're serving a dual purpose of giving their child a Christmas toy, something that they would brush their teeth with every day. These are copies of 60 complaints filed by other adults and parents of children over the issues of these spinning toothbrushes. These persons have also asked that action be taken to prevent this harm and damage. With the FDA's documented acknowledgement of the harm that can be caused while using these products as directed, having now been reported in the media, I do not believe that any elected official or politician who has the authority to pass laws to protect consumers from harmful products would want to be responsible for the potential that children who are continuing to use these specific types of products may have to live the rest of their lives with exposed tooth dentin. This is why it is necessary that you submit a new ordinance or amendment to an existing ordinance based on the facts and evidence in the draft I have made available to all Assembly members and now the Mayor. This will then begin the process of public hearings and verification of the issue of this multiplied harm and damage by not having the pressure sensors that these suppliers have added to other similar operating types of power toothbrushes, specifically to prevent this multiplied harm and damage to the gingivital tissues. Again, the children as young as 3 years of age who are continuing to use these toy-shaped power toothbrushes without pressure sensors do not have the awareness of adults that they may be using too much pressure. The facts and evidence of the multiplied harm and damage that can happen while using these specific types of power toothbrushes is now acknowledged and documented by the FDA and the dental profession. These facts and evidence do not and will not change by asking any additional departments, officials, or other dental organizations' opinions or research regarding the issue of not including pressure sensors to prevent damage from these 5,000 to over 8,000 more motions per every minute's use than could be accomplished manually. Any previous safety standards, studies, or reviews these companies may attempt to use to defend against this multiplied harm is invalid and overruled by these facts and evidence and documentation. All that is necessary is that you verify the information that has been presented to you that includes the numbers of motions per minute's use and the fact that these spinning, rotating, oscillating types of power toothbrushes do not have the pressure sensors that have been added to similar operating types to warn of this harm and stop these motions to begin the process necessary to ban the sales of these specific products.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Anyone else who'd like to speak?
Lisa Maxon, speaking on this because I was a dental assistant for 10 years, and I have seen the damage that those toothbrushes have done to children in their mouths, and it is every single word he's saying I've actually seen, physically speaking. And it's sort of like a problem in society right now where the parents have no time at all to sit down and lay their child on the couch and brush their teeth in the proper manner in which they need when they're 2, 3, 4, and 5 years old. And it really is, this toothbrush is a product, a direct product from our lifestyles that we live today, which is so different than it used to be in the past. So just wanted to say that. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to speak to us? Hearing and seeing no one else, motion would be, assembly comments. I'd like to wish everyone Merry
Christmas.
I'm in the queue, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Starr.
Just a pontification. The Christian holiday typically for Christmas is the birth of Jesus Christ. And in that message, there was a message of peace with principles therein. And I think that it's oftentimes we forget what that is. Those of us that need to act like the three wise guys and go heavy on the myrrh and those, I hope that brings you peace and joy in your family. I will say a prayer one day in public. I'll reserve it for perhaps another night, but understand I'm praying for each of you at the table which I serve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A motion would be in order?
Motion to adjourn.
So moved. We are adjourned.
Hi, everybody. Happy holidays.